Welcome to ACOS, All Kinds of Stuff, the podcast that, just like its host, has a hard time focusing on just one thing. So we talk about a little bit of everything. Glad you're here. Let's get this party started. Welcome back to ACOS Dad Academy. This is your host, David Ritchie. We are beginning a new journey today. We are done with coaching your own kid, and we are headed to Disney World. That's right. This will be part one of what could be a 3-parter, 4-parter, 5-parter, till I tell the whole story of a vacation 3 years in the making. At least 3 years. It could be more than 3 years. But me, Hayden, and Logan finally made the journey to Disney World. We had this thing planned before I even moved back from Fort Worth. Their mom graciously agreed that this could be something that I could do with them. One of these days we'll talk about it, but Krista had taken the boys on a year-long mission trip to Africa, and when they came home, one of the things I asked was that if I could take the boys to Disney World, if that could be something that I could do as their dad, and she agreed. And so we kind of start researching it, but life happens, and I left coaching, I left Fort Worth, I came home, we just had a lot going on and didn't quite get it done. Well, all of a sudden, we're about to take that trip, planning on doing it 2 spring breaks ago, and then COVID breaks out, and everything shuts down, and so we don't get to go that year. And so I tell the boys, hey, we'll make sure we do it next year. But as the next year unfolded, I was just too unsure with COVID because I started to figure out a Disney World trip is not your average financial investment. It is quite expensive. And I don't know how all refunds and all that work, but the last thing I needed was to start pouring a lot of money into tickets, into hotels, into all of that, and it not be open. And I also don't like getting my son's hopes up for a vacation that, it was going to happen at some point, but it had already come close and it had kind of got wiped away. I didn't want it to come close again. I wanted to wait until we could for sure go. And so that became this spring break. But, even with this, Omicron breaks out in the fall, and it never felt like Disney World Universal was going to close, but it's just been a scary thing because you just never knew if the world, I don't believe the world will ever shut down completely like it did 2 years ago, but you just, again, you worried that you're going to put all the planning into it and then it not pan out. But luckily, it did. I will spoil the ending to this story. We had a great trip. It was everything. I wouldn't change a thing about it, which if you listen to Dad Academy and you hear how some of this stuff unfolds, you're going to be like, there's no way you would change that. You would definitely change that. But I'm telling you, as I sit here today, I don't know that I would. Okay, so as we talk about the Disney trip, I've kicked around the best ways to split it up. I've thought about doing one episode per park. I've thought about doing maybe 2 episodes dedicated to Disney, 2 parks per episode, and then 1 episode dedicated to Universal. I've thought about doing 1 episode dedicated to Hayden and the stuff he was looking forward to and the stuff that mattered to him and how he reacted to all of it. I've thought about, and then another one for Logan, talking about the stuff he was excited about and how all that went. I've thought about splitting it up into big rides, little rides. And I'll be honest with you, even right now, I don't know how I'm going to split the rest of the episodes up. But no matter how I split the rest of the episodes up, this episode's going to be about the first day. My sister, Trisha, who I think will listen to this, she knows all about this. My mom and dad know all about this. A few other people know all about this. But I'm going to talk you through how the vacation of a lifetime almost went up in smoke after it had already started. So episode 1 of the Disney trip is going to be literally the journey of us getting from Lubbock, Texas, to Orlando, Florida. Originally, we were going to make this trip midweek. Krista was going to let me take the boys out of school, and we were going to kind of go ahead and get down there. And I thought that was a good idea because maybe we'd get down there before the spring break crowd completely hit. It would allow Krista, it would allow the boys to get home and spend time with Krista on the back end of spring break. But Hayden had UIL band, and we don't want him to miss that. And so it got bumped because his concert, and sight reading was on Thursday. And originally we were going to fly out either Tuesday or Wednesday. And so all of that changed. And this was a while back when that happened. So we redid the flights, redid the hotel, redid the tickets. Not redid the tickets. I waited to buy the tickets. Those of you that have been to Disney, and I have friends that have been to Disney multiple times, those of you that have taken a Disney trip, you may have memories of what it used to be like. I don't have those because I had never been. I think this was my only experience as an adult in planning a Disney trip. So before we get into the journey, let me explain that it is not a simple task. COVID changed everything. I'm assuming. I do not believe it was always like this. So to buy a ticket to Walt Disney, any of the parks, you also have to have a reservation for that park. So originally we were going to leave on Wednesday, so I was looking at going to possibly go to Universal at the beginning and then Disney at the end, or Disney for the first four days, then Universal after that. I was looking at possibly staying in a house off of property, but for whatever reason, and I'm glad we didn't, we decided to stay on property. But you got to plan your days out well in advance. And so after looking and getting some help from some friends and looking at websites, we decided that we would fly out on Friday. So his band concert ended Thursday. I'd go stay in Lubbock with him, and I booked a 5:30 a.m. flight for Friday morning out of Lubbock, Texas. That flight was going to land in Dallas, where we would stay on the plane, and then fly to New Orleans, where we would change planes, and then fly from New Orleans to Orlando on Southwest Airlines. This is all Southwest Airlines, and then we would get there at about 5:30 on Friday. And I had some ideas of some things that I thought we might be able to pull off. I was also excited about just our kids. My kids love being in a hotel and being at Disney. We were going to stay at the Port Orleans French Quarter. A man you will soon learn about named Tony said, "Man, that's a nice place." I said, "Well, I have no idea. It was just the cheapest one." And it was not only the cheapest one, it was the only one that still had rooms available once I had to switch the date. So that's where we stayed. And we ended up doing Disney the first 4 days. So we were going to fly out on Friday. Saturday, we were going to Animal Kingdom. Sunday, we were going to Epcot. Monday, we were going to Hollywood Studios. Tuesday, we were going to Magic Kingdom. Late Tuesday night, after we got home from Magic Kingdom, we were going to take all of our stuff and move from the Disney Hotel to the Surfside Inn at Universal Studios. And then we were going to go Wednesday to Universal Islands of Adventure. Thursday to Universal Studios. Stay till about 1 or 2. Go get our stuff. Go to the airport. Fly home. That was the original plan. And it all started good. So I go to the band concert on Thursday, and props to Hayden and his bandmates. They got straight ones. They did a great job. I really enjoyed getting to go over there and listen to the band. I got to sit in sight reading as well. So everything's off to a great start. I pick him up, take him home, and they've done a great job of packing. They're ready to rock and roll. They give their mom hugs. I did not want to stay in La Mesa on Thursday night. I had a hotel in Lubbock on Friday because 5:30 a.m. flight. I am not a flyer, okay? I like to drive. When we go on trips in the summer, I take the car and we take a tent or we stay in some hotels, but I'm not much of a flyer. I am not an experienced flyer, and that's going to come into factor here in a little bit. So anyway, I didn't want to leave here at like 2:30 in the morning because I knew I was going to be tired all weekend. I didn't want to start the week tired. So I stayed We got a hotel room in Lubbock. I took them to IHOP on Thursday night because it was right by the hotel. They had the choice of Outback, Applebee's, Jason's Deli, or IHOP because they were all right there, or Cheddar's. And we were going to go to Cheddar's, but it was packed, so we decided to go IHOP. And then we all went to bed early, and I told them, guys, you can watch a little TV, but I'm going to sleep early because I had my alarm set for 3:45 a.m., had them ready to roll at 4:15 a.m. Everybody gets up, which I was a little bit worried about. I would sleep through the alarm, and so I woke up every hour on the hour. At 3:45, I'm up. I went outside. It was 15 degrees in Lubbock, Texas when we flew out, so I went outside and warmed up the car. And then I woke the boys up, and then we rock and roll. Okay, we get to the airport. I have never flown with Hayden and Logan, and so luckily for me, they've flown a lot more than I have, so they were kind of helping me make sure we got through security. They knew all the ins and outs of all of that. So everything works good. We get to our gate by about 5 a.m., which is okay in Lubbock because Lubbock's a pretty small airport. And we fly out. And I've got some pictures that I hope to show the world of us on the airplane thinking the vacation we've been planning. And when I say planning, I'm going to plant this seed. This was something that we knew was going to happen. It was just when it was going to happen, we didn't know. But Logan and Hayden spend a lot of time watching videos on YouTube. And so for the last 3 years, especially Logan, he has watched every video of every ride at every Disney park and every Universal park. I mean, he's watched them in the dark. He's watched them with lights on. He knows which ones are going to scare him. He knows which ones he wants to try. This is something he's been looking forward to for a long time. So at 5:30, the plane takes off from Lubbock, and we're ready to rock and roll. We land in Dallas. We don't change flights. Everybody else gets off the plane. We just hang out there for a bit. Everybody else loads back up, and we fly from Dallas to New Orleans. And the plane tickets have us having about an hour and a half layover in New Orleans. We're going to fly out of there at, I believe, right before noon. And I believe we were going to land in Orlando at about 2:30, which I figured it'd be about, they don't run that shuttle from the airport to Disney anymore, so you're going to Uber. You know, I thought we'd get to the hotel around 4. Okay. So we land in New Orleans, and I'm reading a book the whole time. I'm reading a book about how to pass superintendent's exam. The boys are watching movies or whatever, and the second we land, I check my phone. And at 8:54 a.m., a notification or text from Southwest Airlines comes across telling me that your flight from New Orleans to Orlando has been canceled. And you have been rebooked for a flight on Monday night, which would have got us there late Monday. Well, again, I'm not a flyer, but I'm also not a panicker. And so Logan sees my phone. He sees the word canceled. I don't know all this till later, but I just tell the boys, okay, guys, we got a bit of a problem. So we're going to get off the plane. When we get off the plane, we're going to go try to get it fixed. And my sons, you're going to learn a lot about my son's character in episode 1 of the Disney trip because it was pretty impressive. So we walk off the plane, and I'm trying to think. I've got no idea what to do, okay? I've never been in this situation. I have friends that have missed flights or had flight canceled. My sister in Boston, her and her husband Scott, a lot of times going places, they had been... I just remembered them telling me stories about having been offered money to miss the flight and go on the next one and always taking it. So I knew that there was things like this that would happen, okay? But I didn't really know what to do. But here's the problem. I cannot wait to get rebooked, okay? Not only am I a principal who has to come back to work, and not only are my sons 2 students that have to get back to school next week, we've got everything booked. So for us to have arrived late Monday night was not a possibility for me because I had promised my sons this Disney trip. And it's not like you're taking the tent out into the forest. They'll look forward to that. But what are they going to do? We're going to hike. We're going to see some animals. And if we have to go a day late or leave a day early, it's no big deal. But this ain't that trip. This is Walt Disney World and Universal. And honestly, it's probably a once-in-a-lifetime trip. Now that I'm back, I do hope to take them because there were some things I'd like to go do again, but never will there be. This trip will not ever be replicated again. So I walk out of the plane and I walk straight to the closest Southwest employee I see. And it's a lady working behind the desk at another gate. And I am a very respectful person, probably too respectful because I don't always. Sometimes I heard someone say a couple days later, the squeaky wheel is the one that always gets noticed. Well, I am not a squeaky wheel. I just very politely say, ma'am, I need some help. I just got this text as soon as we landed that our flight has been canceled, and I just need to know what we can do. And so she types, she types a little bit and just tells me, well, the quickest we can get you to Orlando is going to be Monday, March 14th at about 9 o'clock. And I just tell her, ma'am, that's not something we can do. I said, you're telling me there's no other flights that can get us to Orlando. And she types some more. And she says, everything else is booked. And I said, okay, so I realized real quick she's not overly friendly. She's not to say she's not going to help is probably not true. You people, if anybody listens to this that travels a lot, you're probably going to tell me, well, that wasn't anything she could do. So the next question I ask her, and I'm thinking to myself, okay, we got to go get our luggage, and then I'm going to continue to try to get ourselves to Orlando. So I asked her, I said, ma'am, okay, so where will our luggage go? And she said, sir, I have no idea where your luggage will go. She said, if I was you, I would just go to the baggage claim that flight, if you were going to land in New Orleans and not connect, go to that baggage claim. So I grabbed the boys, and Logan, you can tell, is he's starting to worry a little bit, as is Hayden, and I'm doing my best to put on a good face, but I'm worrying a little bit too. So we go to the baggage claim and we hang out, and I'm thinking to myself, get the luggage and then start figuring out the next step. But I know I need to get our luggage. All right, so we wait, and then the little things start to move, and everybody's grabbing their bag. Well, our bags never show up, and the thing stops moving. And I'm like, okay. Well, so they have a little Southwest office in the baggage claim, so I walk over there and I say, sir, I was on a flight to Florida that got canceled, and so I need to track down our luggage. And he said, well, I bet it went ahead and went on to Florida. And I said, well, if it went on to Florida, I would like to know what plane it went on to Florida on, because we would have liked to have been on that plane, because we were told there was no other flights to Florida. And so he gets on the walkie and he calls out there to the people, whoever the people are, and says, hey, we need some luggage that came off the flight from... I told him we came from Lubbock to Dallas. I thought I heard him say that came from Dallas to New Orleans. So we hang out. Nobody ever buzzes him back on the walkie-talkie. So I see the baggage thing start moving again. And, of course, I got two boys, and we're in New Orleans. I was telling my mom this would be a whole different ballgame if we were in Dallas, because I know people in Dallas. And I coached in Fort Worth, so I know that if we did get in a major bind, there'd be some people that could come help us. But I don't know anybody in New Orleans. And so I take my sons back out to the baggage claim, and we watch that next little baggage still no bag. So I walked back over to him, and I said, sir, we still haven't got our bags. And he said, well, I still haven't heard back from the people outside. Let me radio them again. And this time I hear him say something about they originated in New Orleans, even though we had landed in New Orleans. And I said, no, sir, we landed here. We flew from Dallas via Lubbock. And he acted all put out and said, you told me you were a local. And a lot of times, because I'm an old man and I'm getting old in age, I do say things that I don't remember saying. But I can promise you I never told him I was a local in New Orleans, because I'm not. And I can't imagine a sentence in which that would come out. And I said, no, sir, I'm not a local. And I'd also handed him our boarding tickets for the whole day. So he's looking at them, and our baggage claim tickets. And so he says, well, why don't you go ahead and try to figure out your next step and then come back down here later and we'll see if you found your bags. And I said, fair enough, because honestly, I was a little worried that I was wasting precious time. I could not have been the only person on that plane that landed in New Orleans that needed to get to Orlando. So I think all these other people are ahead of me in figuring out the next step. So I grabbed the boys and we walk upstairs, and I'm a little rattled at this point because the first Southwest person had not told us anything that was, I am not going to say she didn't help us, because she probably answered the question the best she could. But her help was one of, we can't do anything for you until Monday night. And then to go over the baggage claim and them not have any idea where our bags are, I was starting to get a little frustrated. And so I don't know my way around airports. I know once you leave security, you can't come back. I know that the ticketing stuff is in one part. So we walk upstairs and I see a TSA agent, and I just say, hey, sir, this has just happened to us. Where do I need to go? And I will say this, of all the people in the New Orleans airport, I believe his name was John, he helped the most. He realized it was a pretty big deal, and he told me what you need to do is go to the ticketing people of Southwest, let them know what happened, and see if they can either help you get on another flight, another airline, or help you rent a car. And I was like, all three of those things sound awesome. So as I'm walking up there, I call Krista, I called their mom to let her know, hey, we've got a bit of a problem. I'm working on it. And so she starts researching stuff at home or at work, I'm assuming. And she's also sending, if you can't get a flight, you're halfway there, you could rent a car. And then I also have two friends here in Lamesa, Stacy and Frankie, who are helping from work as well. They're calling different rent-a-car agencies because Southwest is telling us we have no flights. So I go upstairs and I get in the longest line I've ever stood in for Southwest. And so I'm thinking, again, I'm kind of starting to panic. Time is of the essence. So while I'm standing in line, I also call their customer service. Well, when I get connected to customer service, it says my wait time is 88 minutes. Well, I'm only in line for a little over 60. And so by the time it is finally my turn, I just hang up with the Southwest people. Now, let me backtrack a little. So as I'm in line for Southwest, I've got Hayden and Logan. We don't have our luggage. There's two ladies and two daughters in front of me that were also on the plane that are also trying to get to Disney World. And they have a cheer competition. The difference was they had rented a car. Somehow they had a car. Maybe they were not on the plane with us. Maybe they just showed up at the airport because they had a rent-a-car that they were supposed to turn in. Well, as I'm standing in line, I'm starting to get word from Stacy that every single place she calls has no cars. Well, I hear them talking, and I tell them, hey, I'm trying to get to the same place you guys are, but they had a car that was not big enough for them, their daughters, me, and my sons. So I stay in line, and then by the time I finally get to the front of Southwest line, because I had to wait downstairs for the luggage so long, and I was in line so long, if there was any help, the help had evaporated. So now I talk to a different man for Southwest, and he, again, punches the keyboards for a minute, and now they can't even get me on the Monday flight. Now it is Tuesday that they can get me to Orlando. And I tell him, sir, I need your help. And he said, well, there's nothing I can do for you. And I asked him if he could help with other airlines, if they had something that maybe he could help get me connected with them. And he said, sir, we only deal with Southwest. There's just nothing I could do to help you. And so I said, well, my friends are calling rent-a-cars, and they're constantly being told that they don't have any cars. Would Southwest be able to help me get a rent-a-car? And his words were, sir, I'm sorry, but there's nothing I can do to help you. Would you like to go to Orlando on Tuesday? And guys, we're coming home on Thursday. And I just said, no, sir. And that was it. That was the end of the conversation with the Southwest people. I left the line a bit frazzled. But the two things I did not tell him, he asked, that was the end of the conversation, do you want me to put you on the plane for Tuesday? And I said, no, sir, I need to get there earlier. Well, I find out 2 days later that they canceled. With that statement, they decided that meant that I needed to cancel my flight home. But that's a problem that we'll get to later. So I get out of line, and I don't know what to do. And I have two sons that are staring at me that I have not just sat and told them this is what's going on. But Logan had seen when we landed the word canceled on my phone. I'm a pretty calm and collected person, and they can tell I'm a little bit rattled. We've stood in a luggage office for 45 minutes and then another line for an hour. And we don't have luggage and we don't have a way to Orlando. And I got two sons that are pretty sure that this trip that we've planned for so long is not going to happen. And Logan looks at me and he says, he's 11 years old, and he has been looking forward to going to Walt Disney World for 3 years. So since I'm horrible at math, but I believe that's 8. And he says, Dad, it's okay. We don't have to go. And I even get emotional when I'm talking about this right now because I told him, Logan, yes, we do. Because I told you I was going to take you, and I'm going to take you. And then Hayden looks at me, who's 13, and says, but Dad, if it doesn't work out, I have heard that New Orleans has a really good World War II museum. We can go see that instead. So that's an 11-year-old and a 13-year-old that instead of crying, being upset, throwing a fit, pouting because this trip and it's not just that they've built it up, I've built it up. This was going to be the trip of a lifetime for us, and we're sitting there pretty sure it's not going to happen. And I said, let's go downstairs and see if our luggage is there. So we walk back downstairs, and now there's a line of 2 or 3 people, so we stand there and wait. When I get up there, I said, sir, have you heard anything about where our luggage is? And he says, now tell me again who you are. And I pointed at all the stuff I had left with him because I'd left our baggage claims. And I said, that I am the guy that I asked you all ago where our luggage was. And he said, oh, yeah. Let me call them and ask. And he said, now you're a local, right? And I said, no, sir, I'm not. Again, we flew from Dallas via Lubbock. And I said, listen, if you don't know where our luggage is, just tell me what happens to luggage when a flight gets canceled, and I'll go look. Is it somewhere else in this airport? And I don't mind going and finding it. And he said, I don't really know what happens to luggage if the flight gets canceled. And I said, so am I to say that this is the first flight in the history of Southwest Airlines? I mean, I wasn't trying to be a jerk, but you're telling me as the Southwest baggage claim office person that you don't know what happens to luggage when a flight gets canceled. I was shook. I was, for lack of a better term, I was floored. And so I tell him, and this is probably a bad move for Dad Academy because I'm a pretty bad father right here, but like I've got 2 sons and I'm hauling them all over the New Orleans airport. And I can't stand at this luggage place forever because I need to get back upstairs. And when I say upstairs, it's two stories higher than this, and figure out what we need to do. And I can't do that sitting here waiting on our luggage. And I know while I'm sitting here waiting on our luggage, like I've said, there's other people figuring out how to get to Orlando that is affecting me getting my sons to Orlando. So I tell Hayden, and my sons are pretty responsible. I said, Hayden, I'm going to leave you here. Let's stay in the office. It's a little bitty office on the side of the baggage claim. Do not leave this office. Stay with your brother. I'm going to go back 2 stores up. I said, back upstairs, and I'm going to start talking to the other airlines to see if there's anybody that can help me. Because I've looked, the TSA guy, John, that I said was a great help, had said, hey, download Kayak and start trying to book yourself another flight. All I had was Travelocity. So I've downloaded Kayak while all this is going on, and I have Travelocity. And I tell the baggage claim guy, I said, those are my 2 sons, and they're going to stay right here in the office with you. And if you find my luggage, give it to them, but do not let them leave. And I told Hayden Logan, you do not leave. I will come back for you. So I leave them in New Orleans airport, unattended. It was probably not the best move in the world. And I go upstairs, and I'm looking through the different apps, seeing who has flights available. There was, I believe it was a Delta flight that was $1,300 per person. And y'all know, if you listen to this podcast, I'm a principal that has not always made the best financial decisions in the world. So it ain't like I've got just mountains of money like some people do laying on the side. Could I afford $1,300 per person? Absolutely not. Was I going to pay it with a credit card? Absolutely. Because I got to get my sons to Disney. But the second I get back up there and I look and try to type in, instead of 1, I type in 3 because there's 3 of us, flight is no longer available. So I try again, and Spirit Airlines comes up. And I believe Spirit Airlines is actually based in Orlando. And so I see that there is a flight that leaves New Orleans at 9:30 that night, and arrives in Orlando at 9 a.m. the next day, which would put Monday. So obviously the flight is not in the air that whole time. We were going to fly somewhere else, sit all night, and then get on the plane. But it did get us to Orlando Monday morning, and I'm thinking maybe they can sleep on the plane. They can sleep in whatever airport we spend the night at, and we can still be at Animal Kingdom Monday morning, and the trip is good. And so that one's $400. I believe it was $409 per person. I had a backpack. Hayden had a backpack, and that deal was also, $35 per, because they don't let you have any. Southwest, the good thing about it is you get a carry-on and a personal on for free. Not other airlines. I have learned this, do this. And so, you're looking at about $450-ish per person. Again, I'm horrible at math, but I know that's pushing in the $1,100 to $1,200 range. That's a heck of a lot better than $1,300 per person. Yes. Does it push us through the night? But I'm on go. It gets us to Orlando. So I go up to Spirit Airlines and I said, hey, I need to look. I tell her everything that's happened. And I said, I need to see what you have to get me there tonight. And she types a little bit and says, sir, we have no flights. I said, I showed her my app. I turned to my phone and showed her, and I said, ma'am, I'm looking at, I said, Spirit Airlines, and it says that you've got one that leaves tonight, and showed her the flight number and everything, and that flight is booked. It is no longer available. And I said, so why is it showing up on the app? And she said, well, you can try to book it on the app, but I'm telling you, we don't have any of those flights available. So I step away from the counter, and I try to book it on the app. And I get to the part where I'm about to purchase it, and every time I press continue, it tells me that flight is no longer available. All right, so meanwhile, while all this is going on, Stacy has been calling every rent-a-car place, and they do have cars They just won't rent them to us because it's only a one-way trip because I'm flying home. All right. I never told them to cancel my flight home. I think Southwest, if you listen to this, I think you don't need to assume. I think the words need to be like there needs to be a conversation where either the person with the ticket says, hey, I want you to cancel my flight home, or the Southwest person says, okay, so you're stuck in New Orleans and we can't help you. Do you want us to go ahead and cancel your flight home? That conversation needs to happen because some of us are not worldly travelers and didn't realize you're just going to cancel it without any notification, without a text, without anything. All right, so I step away and I try to book the flight and there's no flights. And so I've got no flights. I've got no car. So I Google Amtrak because I do believe the Amtrak used to run from New Orleans to Orlando, but it doesn't anymore. So then I look, and my sister, Trisha, who is also aware of the situation in Amarillo, she had sent me a screenshot of the Greyhound bus. And again, much like the Spirit Airlines flight, the Greyhound bus leaves from somewhere in New Orleans at around 10 o'clock p.m., and we're at about noon now. We're about 2.5 to 3 hours into this deal. It travels all through the night and supposedly arrived wherever the Greyhound station in Orlando is at about 9:55 or 10 a.m. the next morning. And again, I'm thinking maybe they can sleep on the bus. I've been on a Greyhound bus as far as playing football goes. I've never been on a Greyhound trip. Trisha had. I believe Trisha went from Sweetwater to Lubbock. For those of you not from Texas, that's about, in the car, an hour and 45-minute trip. I think in the Greyhound, it took about 5 hours because they stop everywhere under the sun. So honestly, now that I've made the trip, I bet I'm wrong. I bet that Greyhound trip went even longer than that. And so I'm sitting here thinking, all right, Southwest can't help. There's no other airline. The rent-a-car people won't rent to me because I need to drive it to Orlando and leave it. There's no train. So I'm going to have to Greyhound. All right, so I walk down to the boys. Still no luggage, but thankfully they're still there. And I tell them, guys, let's just go get you something to eat real fast because I don't know what our next step is. And I have yet to say to them, it does not look like our trip is going to happen, but it's slowly getting there. And they know it. But they've got the greatest attitudes in the world. And so we walk back up because there's no, in an airport, all the places to eat are on the other side of security. But on the top floor where I had been trying to go from airline to airline, there was just one of those little bitty stores that had drinks, snacks, magazines, and stuff like that. So I take them in there and I say, hey, pick something to eat out. And Logan looks at me and says, Dad, we could always Uber. And I laugh it off, okay, because both of my sons are very smart, but, and what I said in my head, that's just not really how Uber works. Uber doesn't usually take you a few states down the road. So I just kind of laugh, and I'm like, yeah, it'd be nice. And so I buy them, Logan gets a Lunchable, ahead and get some little bar, and I try to book the Greyhound. And it's sold out. So I got nothing. And even right now, as I tell the story again, I rarely feel helpless. Even right now, I still feel the same helplessness that I felt. I did not know how to tell my two sons that, and yeah, I could probably have called Disney and got a lot of stuff refunded. I could have called the Universal Surfside. I hope, I don't know the answer to this, but I do hope that if I had called them and told them the situation that they would have refunded money. But that didn't matter to me. I mean, it's not like 3 years ago I had planned on saving up and having this trip paid off, but life happens. And so most of this was, I paid for part of it outright, part of its own credit cards, but none of that mattered. what mattered to me was that their dad had promised them a trip, not just any trip, had promised them the trip of a lifetime to Disney World, and we had planned it, and Krista had graciously allowed me to have them for the majority of spring break, and there was not another time that we could do it. And I was about to have to tell them and crush them, and crush me more than anything, and it was just a tough little stretch right there. So they finished their Lunchable, they finished their bar, and I said, all right, guys, let's just go back downstairs one more time and see if our luggage is there. And I honestly thought I was getting ready to take them home. And so we go back downstairs, and as I approach the baggage office, I see that the door is closed, and I see a note on the door. But I also see, stacked back to back to back, 3 suitcases. My suitcase, Hayden's suitcase, and Logan's suitcase. They found them. And when, as ironically or cruelly, cruelly, cruelly sarcastic as life can be, as I got to the door, there was a note on the door that said, back in 5. So we have finally found our luggage, but we can't get to it. It's sitting on the other side of a locked door, and it says, be back in 5. And so I'm just, honestly, I probably even did laugh. I'm like, what else? I mean, seriously, we finally had our luggage show up, but yet I can't get to it because homeboy had to take he had to take a break, and he finally comes and he says, hey, I finally got it. Here's your luggage. Good luck to y'all the rest of the good luck to y'all. I hope y'all figure it out. So the 2 people in the New Orleans airport that helped us the most, honestly, were the TSA guy, because he actually cared to help. And then that was the only kind thing a Southwest employee said to us was, I hope you can figure this out. So we wheel him out of his office, and I stopped for a minute, and my 11-year-old son, who had requested me to get an Uber about 30 minutes before that, looked at me and said, see, Dad, our luck is changing. And I just said, you know what? Let's try that Uber idea then. So we wheel him up 3 flights of stairs. And we get up to the top because the ticketing place is the same place the drop off and departures and all that are. But we don't go outside yet. And I open up my Uber app. And I for a very short time when I was in Fort Worth, I was an Uber driver, and I was a very poor Uber driver. I apologize to anybody who was in my car, because it's a bad move to be an Uber driver in a town you really don't know your way around in. But I knew what the Uber app looks like on both sides. And so I knew when I typed in the destination as Orlando, Florida, that was not what was going to show up on the side of the Uber driver. All it says on the Uber driver's side is somebody needs a ride. And if I remember right, it gives you an idea of how much money you're going to make. Well, the ride, it scans and scans and scans, and all of a sudden it says, your driver will be there in 2 minutes. And so I look at the Uber interface, and it's a lady by the name of Nikita. And so I immediately try to contact her because, on the Uber app, you can contact your driver. It's not their real phone number, and I don't believe it shows your real phone number. But I call because I want to let her know what she just picked up, because I refuse to believe within 2 minutes of asking to be taken to Orlando, Florida from New Orleans, somebody was just like, yeah, ain't got nothing to do today. Let me pick that up real fast. So I called Nikita, and the voice on the other end says, is this David? And I said, yes, it is. And I said, ma'am, I just wanted you to realize what you just picked up, because I'm kind of thinking you didn't know where we're trying to go. And she says, where are you trying to go? I said, Orlando, Florida. And she said, Orlando, Florida? That absolutely did not tell me that's where you were trying to go. I think she said it told her she was going to make like $60. So I don't know where it told her that we were trying to go. And she said, I'm not taking you to Orlando, Florida. And I said, Nikita, listen to me real quick. And I told her the story. And I told her that we were trying to get to Disney. And I told her I had my 2 sons. And we had lost our luggage. And Southwest Airlines had no help for us. And Spirit Airlines had no help for us. And she said, David, I can't take you to Orlando, but I'm going to find you somebody who can. So Nikita says, give me your real number. And I tell it to her. And she says, I'm going to call you back. And she hangs up. Well, Hayden and Logan are sitting there, and they see me on the phone. So I think, and again, they never shied away from positive attitude. They had a good attitude the whole way. But I think they can tell, hey, maybe something good is happening. Now, Nikita never had to call me back. She could have hung up the phone and said, that's the craziest dude I ever talked to, trying to Uber from the airport in New Orleans to Disney World. And she could have gone about her business, but she did not. Nikita calls me back, and she says, I got you somebody. His name's Mr. Tony, and he's about to call you. And I said, so do I need to do it? She said, you just sit and wait. He's about to call you in about 15 minutes. And she hangs up the phone. So again, I'm sitting and waiting. But there's hope. In about 15, it was actually less than that. A few minutes pass by, and the phone rings, and it's obviously a New Orleans area code and all that. And I answer, and it's a guy on the other line. And he says, this David? I said, is this Mr. Tony? And he said, they lying to me, right? And I said, what are you talking about? He said, they trying to tell me you trying to get to Orlando, Florida. I said, Mr. Tony, they're not lying to you. And so I retold him the story, and he said, your boys are right there with you? And I said, yes, they're sitting on 2 suitcases right here. He said, you trying to get to Disney World? And I said, yes, sir. He said, let me call you back. So he hangs up, and again, I go back and I sit with the boys, and they're asking me questions, but I don't want to tell them. I don't want to give them hope because I feel like it's just already been crushed out of them, and you parents know what that feels like. And so I don't tell them anything. I just say, well, we're waiting. We'll see. About 10 more minutes pass by, and the phone rings, and he says, man, he said, I just cleaned my car yesterday, so I guess it was meant to be. He said, I got one bad habit. He said, I smoke. So he said, I'm going to smoke me a cigarette real quick, and then I'll be there to pick you up. And I said, well, he said, but it ain't going to be cheap. And he said, I'm going to need the money up front. And I said, he said, so how much are you willing to pay? And I said, I can't answer that question, Mr. Tony. I said, what I need you to do is tell me what you need to get me and my sons there. And he told me a number, and I said, done. And we won't talk about what that number is, but all of a sudden we were going to make it. And so I said, what kind of car you drive? He says, I drive a little red Corolla. And he says, I'll be there in a few. So we take our stuff outside, and sure enough, about 10 minutes later, a little red Corolla pulls up. All right, so here is the second part of where I'm a questionable father, and I'll admit to it. We're about to put ourselves in a car with a stranger, all right, and we're in New Orleans. And you know, as I told the story to my dad yesterday, he said, yeah, but you got to understand, you were risking a lot, but so was he. Mr. Tony doesn't know us any more than we know him. And so he pulls up, and I tell him, listen, I don't carry a lot of cash with me. Again, I know people in the world can just throw money into the wind and not worry about it. I ain't that guy. So I had a certain amount of cash that I had taken out to spend on meals throughout the week. So I gave him what I had, and I said, take me straight to ATM, and I'll give you the rest. And so we get in the car, and I said, the only thing I'll ask, and again, I don't know this dude. I said, stop somewhere so I can get my son something better to eat than the Lunchable and protein bar that they had just ate in the airport. And he said, well, there's a McDonald's right up here. And he said, there's an ATM and a gas station right next to it. So I turn around and I ask my sons, who are just selling in the back of a stranger's little red Corolla. And I said, guys, y'all want McDonald's? And they look at me just as happy as anything and said, no, Dad, we don't have to eat right now. We can get the trip started. We can eat later. And I said, well, we're going to have to stop at least at an ATM so y'all can get out and get something to drink and snack on at least. And he turns around. He doesn't know me. He says, man, I just cleaned my car. I don't need a mess back there. And I said, they're pretty neat. We won't make a mess. Well, he pretty soon says, hey, I guess you could just Venmo it to me and we could save you the fee. And so I do. And so in about 40 minutes, we've gone from hopeless to either hope-filled on our way or really dumb and just gave a stranger a substantial amount of money and so he can take us out into the middle of nowhere and shoot us. I mean, really, think about it. It was not a smart move. I have called their mom. So we stop at the gas station anyway, even though I've Venmoed the money so we can get them something to eat. And we get out. And Hayden wants to stay in the car. I was like, no, you're not staying in the car with a stranger. And Tony gets out to, quote, unquote, get some fresh air, which we come to know over the next 12 hours. That means he needs to smoke a cigarette. And we go into the convenience store, and Logan has this tendency when we're at a convenience store to really study the candy aisle and the drinks until he finds the exact one he wanted. And I said, son, this can't be that kind of trip. I need you to grab something and get out. I said, Hayden, you stand at the window and you watch. And I said, and if that car starts to take off, you tell me. Now, I had my money and I had my phone, but my backpack and Hayden's backpack were still in the car. So Hayden stands watch at the window, and about every 20 seconds, I'm like, Hayden? He goes, no, Dad, it's still here. And so I said, well, let me get your snack. What do you want? He tells me. And as I'm grabbing it out of the cooler and off the shelf, Hayden, not Dad. He's still out there. He's out there smoking a cigarette. So we pay for our food, and we get in the car. And we start our trip to Orlando, Florida. And immediately when we get back in the car, Tony calls his dad. Now, you guys that listen to any of these ACOS episodes know that I'm very close to my dad. And you could tell immediately, and he has them on speaker. It wasn't, I watch scary movies nonstop. So if he would have just had him like where only he could hear it, it could have been a fake phone call, but he didn't. He put him on speaker. And he was like, Dad, you ain't gonna believe what I'm doing. I said, I am taking a stranger and his two sons to Florida. And he said, Dad, they've got this trip planned and the flight people weren't helping them out. And I got to help them out. I got to get them there. And after he hangs up with that, he shows me where all of his Ubers. So Nikita, as it turns out, Tony, Nikita, a lady named Diane, and a man named Perry all hang out at the New Orleans airport Uber parking lot because they only let a certain amount of Ubers up to actually pick people up at a time. So there's this giant parking lot with hundreds of cars that he showed me on the way out where they hang out. And over the years, they have gotten to be really good friends. And Nikita had called Tony because Tony had come in late for work that day. And they had called Tony as he was pulling into the airport. And Tony thought they were joking. So after the first phone call, when he said, I need to call you back, I found out later that he pulls in and that Nikita, Diane, and Perry and him are all talking about whether this is real or not. And once it was discovered it was real, they start telling Tony how much money he needs to make off of this if he's really going to drive us. Guys, I think it's right around 600 miles. If he's really going to drive us to Florida, you got to do this. And Tony did not. I will say this. I hope, Tony, if you ever listen to this, I hope you feel well compensated. But he did not go as high as what they were telling him to because he just kept telling them, guys, I can't take all. He's a dad with two kids going to Disney. He's got to still have money to spend when he gets down there. So I find all that out over the next 12 to 13 hours because sitting here today, I will tell you that Mr. Tony, I consider a friend. And We talked the entire way. He wanted to get us through Mobile, Alabama before it got too busy, so we made that trip pretty quick. He kept forgetting Hayden and Logan were in the back because he kept telling me every time he's had kids in the car with Uber, they just argue all the time, and Hayden and Logan don't do that. Hayden read his book. He's reading Ready Player One. He read his book the entire way. 0 complaints. Logan got on his iPad and just played on his iPad. Off and on, I'd turn around and they were sleeping. I called Stacy. I called their mom. I texted my sister. I didn't want to text my mom and dad because I assumed, as I would if this was Hayden and Logan older, I assumed they would freak out. But I knew Trisha was around them, and Trisha had been aware of the whole situation and tried to help with the Greyhound because they were visiting her in Amarillo, so I let her know. And we embarked. And along the way, I find out that Tony's been to the Rattlesnake Roundup in Sweetwater, which I knew that wasn't a lie because you don't say the Rattlesnake Roundup unless you've been to the Rattlesnake Roundup. We talk about LSU and Florida State football. We talk about everything. And at some point, we all get hungry. And this is where I knew, some things were meant to be. We have to stop every now and then. So as Logan just thought it was hilarious. So for the remainder of the trip, anytime we saw someone smoking a cigarette, Logan would say, "Hey, Dad, that person's getting them some fresh air." And we would get gas, and so I wanted to make sure I paid for all the gas on the way up there. So when we would get gas, Tony would get him some fresh air. But that fear that we had the first time of making Hayden stand watch, it was gone immediately because Tony was one of the most genuine and sincere and good-hearted people that I've ever met. And truth be told, he saved our trip. And I've told him this, and I don't think he understands. When you're a dad, and in my case, I'm a divorced father, that it's important that you keep your promises to your kids. And he single-handedly, completely, and he got paid. But he drove us in his little red Corolla from New Orleans to Orlando, Florida, and then turned around and drove home. The day after he picked us up was going to be his birthday. He is a year younger than me. And because of the time change, we actually got to spend his birthday with him. We stopped at Buc-ees at one point because he got to craving a slice. I believe he got sliced. He either got pulled pork. I believe he got pulled pork. It was either pulled pork or a sliced brisket sandwich. And when we got there, I didn't even worry. We all got out. He got his fresh air, and then he went in the store, and Hayden went with him. And Hayden went and hung out at Buc-ees and shopped with him while Logan went with me. And, my sons have talked about him nonstop since then. And so going back to the very beginning of this podcast, when I said I wouldn't change a thing, do I wish that the flights would have worked out and that we would have just hopped off of one plane onto another, got to Orlando at 5:30, gotten to do some fun stuff? Maybe. But will I always, and will my sons always remember a man named Tony that had no reason whatsoever to come to our aid, yet he did? Would I remove that from their memory and their life? No. And so I don't know that I wouldn't choose it now looking back, because it was a great reminder after, honestly, feeling like no one wanted to help us. And people that defend the airline people, I'm not saying you're wrong, because maybe there was no help to give us. But there sure was no effort to give even a kind word other than the TSA and the baggage claim guy that said, "Hey, I hope it works out." No one else remotely cared. And because it doesn't matter to them that this unknown man and his 2 sons are on a trip that they've been planning for 3 years that means the world to them. They don't know that. They don't care that. And there's a million people that come through that airport every day that have their own story. So we were nothing unique to them. But we were to Mr. Tony, and we were to Nikita. And I have let them know that anytime they're in Texas, they always have a place to stay with me. And I have Tony, we've texted several times since then. If I ever get back to New Orleans, you are absolutely correct. We're going to hit him up and we're going to hang out. And my sons talked about him till the bitter end. And there are still great people in this world, and I just will forever be grateful to Nikita for calling Mr. Tony and for Mr. Tony for answering the call in a huge way. So we made it to Orlando sometime between 11:30 and 12:30. I don't remember exactly when it was. And I wasn't going to sleep. I let my son sleep, but I stayed awake the whole time. I talked to Tony the whole time and felt like I knew him by the time we got there. We got out of the car, we unloaded the bags, and he just turned around and went back to New Orleans. I made him take a picture with Hayden and Logan, which I have. And right behind them, you will see the Little Red Express, which is what he calls his Corolla. And even though we didn't fly and we ended up spending 11 to 12 hours in a car, and that night we checked into the hotel, went straight to sleep. When instead of doing anything fun that night or whatever, when we woke up Monday morning, we were at Animal Kingdom, and we were able to do everything over the next 6 days that we had planned to do for so long, all because of Nikita calling Mr. Tony and Mr. Tony coming and picking us up in the Little Red Express. So not every episode will be as long as this one, but that is a story that I don't want to forget. And I figure if I do this podcast, I'll never forget the story. I'll never forget the helplessness I felt in that New Orleans airport. If you work in the travel agency at all, think to yourself, not everybody knows what they're doing when they come and talk to you. Some people are truly scared that they have no idea what to do. So help them. So when I get back on here next time, I'm actually going to talk about the trip. I'm going to fast forward 24 hours. So we went to Animal Kingdom the next day, and for Jennifer, my sister in Boston, had sent me a text. She didn't know about any of this because I hadn't talked to Jennifer a lot lately. She didn't even know we were going to Disney. So I kind of filled her in, and while we were standing in one of the lines at Animal Kingdom, and she was just like, wow. And then she sent this text that said, hey, Scott, her husband, said, you may want to make sure they didn't cancel your flight home. And I laughed. And I said, why would they cancel our flight home? I never told them to do any of that and didn't check it. And so that night we get back from Animal Kingdom. It was the only park we didn't stay at till close. We got home. We were tired. We got home probably 6-ish. And I was like, I'll check it real quick. The boys were playing in an arcade in the lobby. And guess what? I had no flight home. So I call Southwest, and I am on hold for 2 hours. And I give my sons $20, actually more than that, on a game card to go play in an arcade so that I can talk to them. And I am on hold for 2 hours, and I finally get connected with somebody that refuses to believe that I did not tell them that I wanted my flight canceled. Sir, it says here you asked to have your flight canceled. And I said, ma'am, if I asked to have my flight canceled, why would I have paid way much more money than I wanted to pay a stranger to drive me and my sons all the way to Orlando, Florida? And we went back and forth and back and forth. But after 3 hours, she put me on hold. But she came back and she had fixed it so that we had a way to get home. And after that, because I had spent, they had taken away the first day of enjoyment. And then guys, we are at Disney, and I'm sorry I keep saying that, but that's a huge deal to us. I'm not the guy that's going to be able to go back there every year or probably every 5 years. I mean, I'm 48, and this was the first time I've been able to take my sons there. So it was a huge deal, and it was our trip. And so we had come back from the first day after spending the whole day getting down there. We had come back the first day, and I had immediately sent them off to play by themselves so I could be on hold with Southwest for 2 hours and then get in an argument with them again. So once they fixed the flight, I hung up, and I said, I'm just going to trust that the rest of it's going to take care of it, because I am not going to waste my time with where I have my sons on this trip of a lifetime. I'm wasting no more time trying to get that stuff fixed. Because, and as I told Hayden, for real, you want to cancel me going to Disney? That's a problem, because I promised y'all Disney. You want to cancel me at the end of the trip? Y'all want to make me charge? Y'all want to make me pay another sum of money to get another stranger to drive us all the way home? Or y'all want to make me pay more? Y'all want to make me pay? They told me they had refunded my flight. I think I looked at the funds, and I think they'd refunded me like $100. And I'm sure they've taken that away. But you want to do that at the end of my trip, as long as we got the Disney trip, the universe, as long as the trip was over, do what you will. I'll figure it out. I'll charge some more. It ain't like I ain't going to be paying on them cards for many years anyway. I'll charge some more. But they weren't going to take away any more of my time with my sons. And they didn't. And we made it home. So, the end of Disney Part 1 was the trek to getting to Disney. We'll get to talking about the trip on the next one. And then at some point, the next time, Hayden and Logan, the next weekend I have them, we're going to get them on here so they can kind of tell us their favorite parts of the trip. But I want you to take away from this episode is that if you're in New Orleans, don't go to the airport. Don't fly Southwest. Don't lose your bags, because they won't know where bags go. When flights are canceled, there's a black hole that bags get sucked into. Don't try to talk to other airlines. Don't rent a car. But for sure, absolutely, without a doubt, call Mr. Tony or call Nikita, because they will take care of you. And I will forever be indebted to those two guys. And I never got to meet or talk to Diane and Perry, but I think they had a role in this too. So I hope someday I get to meet you guys as well. All right, this was a long episode, but it was a story I don't ever want to forget. Thanks for going on the journey with me. It's funny now. It was not funny that day, but it's funny now. You guys have a great week, and I will see you on the next episode where we actually get to talk about some of the fun stuff that Hayden and Logan and I did in Orlando, Florida. Thanks for listening to Dad Academy. You have been listening to ACOS Podcast, All Kinds of Stuff, with your host, David Ritchie. And I sincerely want to thank you for stopping by and giving us a chance. The music you hear now and the music you hear at the beginning of our podcast was done by my 13-year-old son, Hayden Ritchie. And everything I do is inspired by not just Hayden, but my other son, Logan Ritchie, as well. You can find me at Twitter, at ACOS Podcast. That is capital A, capital K, capital O, capital S, capital P, and everything else is in little letters. At ACOS Podcast. Feel free to follow me, reach out with any questions you have. Have a great week. Thank you for listening.